Hey guys, my name is Stephen. I'm senior pastor here at Cokesbury. I want to welcome you into our service of worship. I'm pumped wherever you're watching from that you're a part of what we're doing here today. Before we get started, I want to say a quick thank you. If you tuned in last week, you heard me ask for some help. We've got a situation here at Austin East High School where a lot of the kids are facing some gun violence in the community. And so we wanted to do something for the staff that just sort of said, hey, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for investing in this community. And so we ask you guys to bring gift cards and to also bring some candy. And we've made these bags that we're actually going to be delivering to the school. And so I want to say thanks to you guys because in typical fashion, you guys went above and beyond what we asked you to do. So not only have we been able to give a gift to every staff member at Austin East High School, but we've also been able to go on to Vine Middle School and to Sarah Moore Green Elementary School, both of which are feeder groups into Austin East. And so we were trying to come up with 150 staff members. We're able to cover 3 complete schools and all of their staff. And what's really great is each teacher's even getting 2 gift cards. So you guys went way over and above what we thought you would. And so I just thank you guys for your generosity. And I know that the faculty and the staff really appreciate knowing that there are people in the community that love them and support them. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. I'm so proud of you. Also want to say hey to our Johnson City crowd. Those guys actually sent us 20 gift cards, and so pumped that you guys were doing that all the way from Johnson City. Much love to y'all. Really appreciate your effort. So we're going to continue our series that we started last week called I Need a Miracle, and I want to start here. I was thinking this week, I played a lot of sports growing up, like was really into baseball, wrestled some. I even threw shot put on the track team. And my favorite sport of all, though, is football. And I loved everything about it. I love the camaraderie. I love just the sheer physical violence of the sport. Like, it literally is the only sport where you can go out and you can knock somebody's block off and not get in trouble for it. And so I love that whole physical aspect of it. Really appreciate the life lessons that I learned. And for those of you that played football, you're probably like me. You came to the realization one day that you needed football a lot more than football needed you. And I was certainly one of those guys. It helped keep me on the right path when I was growing up. And it really taught me some lessons that I've carried with me all throughout life. And I'll be honest, I planned on trying to play football, not only through high school, but I had aspirations. I wanted to play in college, and maybe if it worked out, I could even play beyond that. Until one hit altered my complete view of the future. It happened very early on in my senior year. We went up to Athens, Tennessee, and we played McMinn County. And McMinn County in that year had a middle linebacker named Shazan Bradley. And if you are a fan of Tennessee sports, you know that Shazan Bradley went on to be a tremendous linebacker at the University of Tennessee. In fact, here's a picture of this guy. He was literally a mountain of a human being and was by far the best athlete in the entire area, if not the entire state. And so I played center, and so he was lined up right over me, and it became very apparent early on in that game that it was going to be mano and mano, me against Shazan Bradley. And so on the very first play, I snapped the ball, and he came running toward me, and I went running toward him. Now, obviously, he was coming a lot faster at me than I was going at him, but we made contact. And y'all, listen, we both collided, and we both went down. The difference is he hopped right back up and still made the tackle on our running back. And I did not hop right back up. In fact, I was seeing stars. I had no clue where I was. And like they're holding up fingers and I'm like, yeah, cool, fingers, right? And so they helped me to the sidelines. And understand, this is in the late 1980s. There were no concussion protocols. The idea was, catch your breath, son, you're going right back in the game. The next several weeks, I still remember, felt like the earth was sort of tilted about 20 degrees and my neck hurt and everything just seemed sort of discombobulated and I had no real sense of what was going on. And the rest of that season, and frankly off and on ever since, that play has always been in the back of my mind. In fact, every time I got out on the field, I remembered that one hit. I remember how much it hurt, and I remember how much it just straight messed me up. And it got me thinking, have you ever gotten hit so hard by something in life that after that blow, you're just not quite the same. Like, you just can't quite go about it in the same way. It sort of follows you around and continually affects you. Like maybe you've been through a deal in your marriage or in your relational life and somebody betrays you or somebody breaks your heart. That happens sometimes. And because of that experience, you're just sort of knocked down. Maybe you would say, I'm actually feel like I've been knocked out. And you're like, you know what? I'm not trusting anybody else. I'm not fully opening my heart again to anyone. I'm done with dating. All men are bad or all women are bad. Like you've been hurt and you've been knocked down by that experience. Or maybe you're at work and there's that one person that's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. You're so tired of feeling overworked or underappreciated. And then there's that one rude customer, or there's that one just absolute jerk at the office. And you feel like you're gonna snap. And you're like, you know what, I'm done. I've had it, that's it, it's over. And you either quit or you quit caring, which is just as bad. You just feel knocked down or defeated. Or maybe you're trying to get healthy, right? That's a big one. You're trying to get things back under control. Like, this pandemic has straight wreaked havoc. I saw this picture on social media that I think sort of encompasses exactly how a lot of us feel. It's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, right? Can you relate to that at all? Like maybe you're trying to lose some weight and you're working out and you're paying attention. And then you get on the scale and the scale doesn't cooperate, right? Like you've been tracking all the food, you've been counting all the steps, you've been following the plan, and you step on and nothing. And you know, you've tried everything, right? Like you take all your clothes off before you get on the scale. You even exhale to try to get all the air out of your body. Or maybe if you're like me, you stand on one foot and right before you step on, you whisper a prayer. God, please let this scale be reflective of my effort. And you just get so discouraged and you're like, you know what? Forget this, man. It's stupid. It's not worth it. And sometimes you get knocked down. And you even get knocked out by what's going on in your life. Well, if that's you, I want you to know that I really do believe that Jesus can help you stand back up. You don't have to stay knocked down. And so today I want to talk about the God of miracles because I believe he really can help us get back up. He can help us find a new hope and a new purpose and new meaning and learn to step forward in faith and realize your best days are not behind you, man. Your best days are still to come through faith in Jesus Christ. We've been in this series called I Need a Miracle. And we've been working our way through the Gospel of John because in his gospel, he records 7 miracles that, as we learned last week, he says are signs, right? They're pointing us toward the God behind the miracle so that our faith can deepen and our strength can actually increase. We looked at the first one last week where Jesus was at a wedding and he was able to turn water into wine. And so there was this conversion that happened. And one of the things we learned is that Jesus is still in the conversion business, right? Like he converted water into wine, which means he can convert those who are hopeless into people who are filled with hope. If you find yourself being in a state of misery, he can take that misery and can still give you purpose. He's still doing conversion. We learned that God does all kinds of miracles, right? Like some of them are in an instant. They're like in the moment. But more times than not, they're actually slow motion miracles where we aren't really sure when that conversion happens. It just began to unfold somewhere along the way. And we came to the conclusion that maybe the miracle God wants to do in us is actually more important than the miracle we're asking God to do for us. And learning to position ourselves to hold on to that hope that it's about what God's doing in me and not what God is doing for me, that is a sign of a deepening faith. The second miracle shows up in John chapter 4. And it's kind of a long distance miracle where Jesus heals a guy's son. And because it's also a healing miracle, we're going to combine that with the third miracle that shows up in John chapter 5. It's the healing of a lame man. Now, let me kind of set this up. Jesus is in Jerusalem. There's this huge festival going on. all of the religious leaders there, and y'all, it is straight packed out. Like there are people everywhere. And instead of going to the temple where most of the action was, John says that Jesus goes to this area where there were all these people who had literally been laid out by life. They'd been knocked down by their own circumstance. And so there's all of these sick individuals, and they're gathered around this pool. And they were there because they felt like the water was supposed to have all of these healing properties. And they knew that if they could just get into the water, then that would mean they would be healed kind of supernaturally. And so here's what we see in John chapter 5, beginning in verse 3. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. Imagine that, 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he'd been laid ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" Now, just as an aside, this is an interesting kind of deal. Because in the original language, the idea is not only did Jesus see him, right? When Jesus saw him, he intimately knew what he was going through. John's deliberate in saying when Jesus saw him and knew that he had been ill for a long time. In other words, Jesus in that moment had empathy and compassion for this guy's situation. It says verse 6, when Jesus saw him and knew that he had been ill for a long time, he asked, "Would you like to get well?" Somebody's watching right now, and you know you need a miracle. And you're wondering, does God actually see me? Does God hear my cries? Is it possible that God actually cares with everything else going on in the world? Is it possible that God cares about what I'm going through? And I just want you to take some encouragement from this story. Jesus not only sees this man, his heart gets turned toward him. He feels his struggle. He's able to connect with what he's been through the past 38 years. He sees and he actually cares. And then Jesus asked this question, do you want to get well? Now, if you think about it, that's weird, right? He's been on his back for 38 years. He's been an outcast for 38 years. He's been overlooked for 38 years. He's been put down and forced to beg for everything he has for 38 years. So honestly, when Jesus asked him that question, at least as an outsider looking in, it feels like it might be a dumb question, right? Because of course he wants to get well. But I think there's more to the question. In fact, I think there's a question behind the question. Because if you read through John chapter 5, there's a bigger question about Jesus' authority. And I think part of what he's asking this guy is, not just do you want to get well, but do you believe that I have the authority to help you in this situation? And he'll go on to show us that he absolutely has that authority. But it just reminds us that no matter what you're up against in life, and no matter what's knocked you down, God is greater than your greatest problem. Like God is in charge of whatever it is that maybe has taken charge of you. That God isn't limited by what's limiting you. He is straight up large and in charge. He's still on the throne. He's still in control, and he can still move and work in your heart and in your life. And so the question becomes, well, what do you do when you need a miracle? Well, the first thing in this story that I see is that you and I've got to position ourselves to believe that God is greater. This is what Jesus is implying in this moment for this man. Is, do you believe that I have the authority to actually help you? Do you believe that I'm greater than the problem that you're facing? How many of you guys know somebody who's stubborn? How many of you guys might be sitting on the couch next to the person right now, right? Like, I bet that's going to be a fun conversation. This may be surprising, but for those of you that don't know me very well, you may not realize this, but I can be pretty stubborn. Like, there are times in my life where I can be incredibly strong-willed, especially when I drive. And one of the things that drives me crazy is when my wife, Beth, tries to give me directions when I drive. She'll make some comment, and I'm like, hey, hang on, girl, I got this. Back that thing up right there. And we usually end up taking it too far, which is never a good thing, because often what will happen is when she's offering an honest critique is I'll just say, well, honey, would you like to drive? Like, I'd be more than happy to pull over and give you the wheel. Like if I'm gonna drive, let me drive. I'm gonna get us there. I know where I'm going. Listen, even when I don't know where I'm going, I know exactly where I'm going. Now, unless you feel sorry for her, she will tell you that she's exactly the same way. In fact, that's why we don't often drive together. It's one of those little weird things in our marriage. Like when we go on vacation, we actually travel separately because we know that this is a touch point in our relationship. And y'all, I'm telling you, that stubborn gene, it runs deep in our family. The Bible uses some interesting language when it comes to how we can be stubborn in our relationship to God. It's language like sometimes we can be hard-hearted. We can get a hard heart toward God, or we can be stiff-necked, which means we won't bow or we won't surrender. We'll continue to kind of fight and push back in our relationship with God. And sometimes in our stubbornness, we can even try to take things in our own hands. We're like, I got a problem, I can fix that. I get lost, I'll find my way out of it. I need a miracle, I'll take care of that. And what happens is, I end up trying to live my entire life all on my own. I try to get where I want to go on my own power and my own strength. And listen, that's fine. You can live your life that way if you want to. But as we're going to see in this story, there comes a time when we all find ourselves in a moment where only a miracle will do. There are moments, there are circumstances, there are situations, there are decisions we face, and we realize that only God's going to get us through. And when we find ourselves in that place, we've got to understand that God is greater than the problem that we're facing. God is greater. God is stronger. God is more powerful. God is in control. In fact, I wrote some things down this week, frankly, as a reminder to myself, but I want to share them with you. These are things in life that Jesus has authority over. Here we go. Jesus has authority over the boss that makes you feel small and over the bills that make you feel broke. Jesus has authority over ABC, NBC, CNN, and the great Fox News. Jesus has authority over Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. He has authority over Wall Street, Main Street, and the street you live on. He has authority over your ex, your kids, your parents, and the person who's making you miserable right now. Jesus has authority over the guy that ripped you off, the car that cut you off, and the person who ticked you off. God's got authority over your dogs and your cats, even though your cats would not listen to you. Jesus has authority over the bills that stream in and the money that flow out. He has authority over your health. He has authority over your kids. He has authority over the addiction that you cannot seem to quit. He has authority over loneliness, your awkwardness. He has authority over COVID-19 and every variant that comes with it. He has authority over the fact that there are no good people to date. Listen, he has authority over your car issues, your control issues, and even your personality issues. The scriptures say the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all of its people belong to him. And friends, that means that you can trust him. He is bigger than what it is that you find yourself up against. Yeah, you may be knocked down, but you are not out. Yeah, it may be difficult in your life right now, but you are not finished. You are just getting started. And so the first step, according to this story, is to simply believe that God is greater, that God is bigger, and that God has the authority to help you. Now, the second thought from this story is to simply stand up in faith. Stand up in faith. So often, we're tempted to think that we can come up with whatever solution we want to come up with. If you think about it, all you really need is your phone and a little money, right? Like if I've got those two things, I can do just about anything. All I got to do is open up an app. Think about it. Let's say you're sitting around and you're like, you know what? I've got to get this thing, right? I've been looking at it. I've read all the reviews. I think I'm going to pull the trigger on it. All you got to do is open up this app right here. It's the Amazon app. And they'll drop it straight at your door. They'll even give you free shipping on most of it. And then let's say you get bored shopping. Maybe you want a little entertainment. That's cool. You just open up the Netflix app, right? Like you can watch all the shows you want to watch. While you're binging The Office, say you get a little rumbly in the tumbly, right? Get a little hungry. No problem at all. All you got to do is open up this app right here. It's Grubhub. Again, Grubhub will drop off anything you want to eat, whether you want tacos or Krispy Kreme or you want a batch of wings. It does not matter. Grubhub will bring it to you, so you don't even have to stop watching Netflix. But then maybe over time, you notice your clothes are getting a little tight and you think, man, I got to get this thing back under control. No problem. You can open up another app. It's the MyFitnessPal. And that MyFitnessPal will help you track your food and count your steps and track all of the calories that you're burning. See, my point is sometimes the temptation in life can be to think that we can work out whatever we're struggling with all on our own. We don't need anybody's help. And the truth is, maybe for a while you can do that. But eventually, it's only going to lead you to frustration and disappointment. In John chapter 5, Jesus asked this guy the question, do you want to get well? And in verse 7, here's his answer. I can't. I can't, sir, the sick man says, for I have no one to put me into the pool where the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me. Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. Now, here's what you have to understand about this story. They believed that periodically, that particular pool where everybody was laying, that an angel would dip down and would stir the water with the tip of its wing. And because it was an act of God, they believed that the very first person into the pool at the exact moment when the angel's wings stirred the water, bubbles up, as he said, that's the moment you would be healed. And so every time that water bubbled up, it would be like the Hunger Games. Everybody's crawling all over each other. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't get into the water on my own. And here's what I think he's implying. He's saying to Jesus, look, if you really want to help me, then pick me up and get me in the pool first. Like, if you can do that, then I can get healed. Look at what Jesus says in verse 8. Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. So what he could not do on his own, God did it for him. Jesus told him to stand up, even though in his own strength and his own power, the one thing he could not do, he was at the end of himself. Listen, you may be at the end of yourself right now, and you may not realize that you are exactly where God has wanted you to be all along. You don't have to go through a crisis to get there. You can actually live your life there. It's called surrender. And when you and I surrender, what we're realizing is, I can't handle everything. I'm not in control of everything. And the longer I live, the more I realize I'm in control of less and less. It's understanding that God is actually in control. And not only is he in control, but I can trust him. I can't do it, Lord, but I believe you can. Jesus says, stand up and walk. It's an unbelievable moment. But here's the deal. I'll be the first one to tell you, how God does miracles in our lives, it is a great mystery to me. I don't fully understand why God moves in certain situations and then doesn't seem to move in others. I've been following Jesus for over 30 years now. I've walked with thousands of people through some really bad stuff. And sometimes there is that instant healing, like you pray and bang, something happens. I don't understand why it happens or where it comes from. And then there are other moments where you just pray and pray and plead and plead and beg, and it seems like it never happens. So what I've come to the conclusion of, it's a place of trust where sometimes God wants us to stand up without the miracle we're praying for, so that we can actually experience the miracle that we really need. See, sometimes we think we need a miracle, and the miracle we think we need is not the miracle we actually need. Maybe what God's really after is the opportunity to use our circumstances or to use our situation to grow us and to grow those around us. And so maybe in this story, what this sign is pointing to is not the miracle the guy prayed for, because remember, he never actually made it into the water. He got a miracle that he wasn't even asking for. All he wanted was Jesus to put him into the pool so he could be healed. But what he did get was Jesus' full attention. And so maybe this story is yet another reminder that God loves us, and that God hears us, and that God knows our struggle, and that through faith, God gives us the greatest miracle of all. It is the miracle of his presence. Maybe that's why two people can face the exact same circumstance and yet have radically different experiences. Not that their circumstance was suddenly ended, or not that it went exactly the way they want it to, but how one collapses under the weight of that circumstance and one seems to have more faith, more strength, more belief, more endurance. It's incredible. Maybe the difference is that they come to the understanding that God is doing a work inside of them, and that work inside of them gives them strength, gives them peace, causes hope to well up inside of them, gives them the ability to stand up and to walk in faith, even though they're not getting the answer when they want the answer to come. Maybe that's what it means to be a true follower of Jesus. It's not about the size of your faith. It's about your ability to trust. Trust that wherever you are and whatever you're facing, that's the moment that God has you in, and that's the moment that God's going to use to do a work in you and to do a work in the life of somebody else. See, friends, I think that's what this sign is. It's a sign that God is madly head over heels in love with you, that God hears your every prayer, that God knows exactly the struggle you're going through, and that God promises, just like Jesus did, to give us his full attention, to be with us, to walk us through every single moment, to give us the strength that we need, to give us the encouragement that we need, to give us a sense of peace. That, my friends, I would argue, is what true peace is. It's understanding that the greatest miracle of all is God's presence. You are not alone. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.